गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट। गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज रशिया और यूक्रेन वॉर का 2 साल हो गया, बिल्कुल ऑन द डॉट। और इसीलिए आज हम 2 इयर्स ऑफ रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर और उसके आगे बियॉन्ड क्या होगा हम बात करेंगे। और हमारे साथ बात करने के लिए हैं कर्नल अजय सिंह। Good evening, Colonel Ajay. Welcome to Gunner Shot for this nice program which we are going to have. And how are
Sir,
you?
thank you, sir. As always, a huge pleasure being on Gunner Shot. And आपने दिन भी बिल्कुल सही चुना है. The second anniversary to mark the second year of this war. मजा आएगा सर आपके
Yeah,
शो के ऊपर.
yeah. और मैं सबको बताना चाहता हूँ, और अगर जो जो जानते नहीं है, कल अजय सिंह ने 2 किताब लिखा है ऑलरेडी ऑन यूक्रेन वॉर। ही इज एन एक्नॉलेज्ड एक्सपर्ट and it is fortunate that he is here with us to talk about the Ukraine war. Actually, ये इन्हीं का आइडिया है। उन्होंने 2 दिन पहले हमें फोन करके बताया कि सर लेट्स टॉक अबाउट द यूक्रेन वॉर। सो आई सेड ठीक है, लेट्स टॉक। टुडे द फॉर्मेट सबको बताना चाहता हूँ विल बी लाइक दिस। यू नो, सब लोग बताते हैं कि देखिए, आप किसी को बुलाते हो, उसको बात करने नहीं देते तो आपका विचार देते हो, ये वगैरह वगैरह। फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट, Ajay and I are not a guest and a host type. We are just here to discuss Ukraine war. So, अगर he might agree with my opinion or not, I might agree with his opinion or not. हमारा मतलब है कि आपको ये यूक्रेन रशिया वॉर का हर पहलू, हर नजर से आपको बताना है, क्योंकि इसके बारे में हर एक आदमी का अपना अपना विचार है। राइट, सो दैट इज व्हाई वी गोइंग टू डू इट इन अ स्लाइटली डिफरेंट वे। सो व्हाट विल डू इज, आपको हम बताएंगे एक संक्षिप्त रूप में। देखिए, आज के दिन अगर रशिया और यूक्रेन की लड़ाई है, हालांकि 2 साल हो गया चल रहा है, ये 5-6 जगह पे रशिया इज ट्राइंग टू ब्रेक थ्रू। इसी इलाके में फाइटिंग हो रहा है और बाकी मिसाइल्स अटैक वगैरह 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 हो रहा है। और इस माहौल में वी शुड बी वेरी क्लियर कि ये व्हाट हैज दिस वॉर डन। 2 साल तो हो गया, इसका परिणाम क्या निकला है, क्या हुआ है, क्या होने वाला है, क्या है, राइट। और ये तो इसीलिए मैंने सोचा ये मोटा मोटा मुद्दा देखेंगे, ये छोटे मोटे बैटल्स नहीं, कि इसका नेचर ऑफ वॉर क्या है, जियोपॉलिटिकल इम्पैक्ट क्या रहा, इसमें क्या टेक्नोलॉजी की रेवोल्यूशन हुआ है, ये क्यों लड़ाई खत्म नहीं हो रहा है, और इसका मेजर लेसन्स क्या है, ग्लोबल आउटकम्स क्या है यूएस से चाइना और इंडिया के लिए, राइट। तो इसी के बारे में पहले आई रिक्वेस्ट अजय, प्लीज गो अहेड एंड यू कैन कवर दिस होल स्टोरी, and then of course as we go along we'll take it on.
Right.
All yours, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. Like the जो slide आपने दिखाई है, just so that all viewers are on the same page. आज 2 years after a war, जो people thought 15 दिन में खत्म होना है. Today, where do we stand militarily in this war? अभी मुझे पता है जो वेस्टर्न मीडिया ने कहा है कि ये रशियन यूजलेस है, आर्मी यूजलेस है, कुछ नहीं किया है, पर जो मैप अगर आप देखोगे, रशिया के गेन्स बहुत हुए थे पहले 4 महीने के अंदर। खरसन, जापोरिज्जिया, डोनेट्स्क, लुहांस्क सब उन्होंने कैप्चर किया है, सब उन्होंने रेफरेंस लेकर के उन्होंने कब्जा किया है, जस्ट लाइक दे डिड इन क्रीमिया इन 2014। ऑल दिस एरियाज आर सीन इन रेड। यहाँ बीच में आपने देखा होगा द लाइन ऑफ कॉन्टैक्ट बिफोर द इन्वेजन, they have extended area by 5 times, 2 lakh square kilometers उन्होंने कब्जा किया है। Now last year 2023 में ये सब हुआ था, सितंबर 22 में ये कहानी खत्म हुई थी। 23 में हमने इतना सुना था अभी यूक्रेन उनका समर स्प्रिंग ऑफेंसिव लॉन्च करने वाला है। यूएसए ने सेंचुरी अपना टैंक्स दे दिया है, M1 टैंक दे दिया है, लेपर्ड्स दिए जर्मनी ने, चीफ अपना चैलेंजर दिए है यूके ने, उन लोग लॉन्च करने वाले हमला, वी विल रीगेन एवरी लास्ट इंच ऑफ आवर टेरिटरी, ये था उनका एम। जो हमला काउंटर ऑफेंसिव हुआ था उनका, जो कि शुरू हुआ था तकरीबन जून जुलाई में, 5 months ऑफ काउंटर ऑफेंसिव के बाद यूक्रेन ने सिर्फ एक जगह पर, जापोरिज्या एरिया में नियर अ प्लेस कॉल्ड तोकमुक, उन्होंने 11 किलोमीटर की अंडर के पेनिट्रेशन कर दिया है। सिर्फ एक जगह पर उन्होंने फॉरवर्ड डिफेंसेस को ब्रीच कर दिया है। यानी कि 1 साल की लड़ाई के बाद रशियन ने पूरे जो इलाका उन्होंने होल्ड किया है, दे हैव सक्सीडेड होल्डिंग इट। अभी वेस्टर्न मीडिया कहते हैं कि नेक्स्ट वी शैल लॉन्च ऑफेंसिव, वी शैल गो डीपर, पर जो हम देखते हैं कि रशियन आर मास्टर्स इन डिफेंसिव वॉरफेयर, दे आर मास्टर्स, दे हैव मेड लो पेनिट्रेशन। और जो सर आपने अभी दिखा दिया ये मैप, ये इंडिकेट कर रहा है रशिया अभी इस साल में कार्रवाई क्या होनी है। Firstly, Russians have now moved on a counter-offensive along a 600-kilometer front. धीरे धीरे द टाउन ऑफ आवदीवका उन्होंने कैप्चर किया है, बाखमुत के नजदीक आ गए हैं, धीरे धीरे वो आगे बढ़ रहे हैं, उनका काउंटर ऑफेंसिव शुरू हो रहा है। और अगर आप रशियन हिस्ट्री देख ले, ये उनकी स्टैंडर्ड प्रैक्टिस है। दे विल वेट फॉर द एनिमी टू अटैक, they will absorb the offensive, and then they will launch a counter offensive which annihilates them. So this is the beginning of a Russian counter offensive. अभी एक और चीज जो हमें, this is the ground situation. Look at the war that has been fought. पूरा war of attrition रशिया लड़ रही है, and उनके रिसोर्सेस enormous है। यूक्रेन में अभी क्या हो रहा है? The West is losing interest. They are left, they can only fight for 45 days without external aid. So, if Russia decides to continue and follow up on this offensive, and if the West loses interest in Ukraine, I think Russia is on its way to attaining, it has already got a lot of military success, but maybe consolidating this military success.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, what more? That's the outcome of the war. Can you talk about the nature of war, and you can
Okay.
talk something?
Right, sir. You know, like when you're talking about the nature of war, आपका first line था ना, short sweet wars. I remember you written that. That is what all of us पिछले 20 साल से, many of us have been reading, writing. I also wrote a few articles on how future wars are going to be short, swift, and restricted in time and area. I think वो standard था, 15 दिन, 6 दिन की लड़ाई होगी, 7 दिन की लड़ाई होगी, 15 दिन की लड़ाई होगी। अभी हमें पता चला this is a conventional war between the two largest nations of Europe. It has gone on for 2 years. अगर आप देखा जाए तो actually gone for 10 years, क्योंकि लड़ाई तो 2014 में शुरू हुई थी. But I'm talking about this phase of the operations. Now, this war it is degenerated into an attritional warfare. A lot of it is trench warfare. जो अभी line of contact था जो आपने दिखाया था, it is actually an existing line of trenches in the Donetsk जो कि 2014 से चला आ रहा है। अभी भी जो रशियन ने डिफेंसेस बनाए हैं, उनके ट्रेंचेस है, डिफेंस फोर्टिफिकेशंस है, एंड जो एडवांसेस हो रहे हैं, जो इनिशियल मनूवर, स्विफ्ट मूवमेंट, वो नहीं हो रहा है। आर्टिलरी फायर, टोटल बम्बार्डमेंट, फॉलो अप विद इन्फेंट्री, टेक ओवर द प्लेस, धीरे धीरे क्रीप करते करते, this is how the battle is progressing. And to show how the war has changed, मैंने एक बहुत बढ़िया फोटोग्राफ देखा था। उस फोटोग्राफ में दिखाया था, there is a line of soldiers. They are carrying their rifles, helmets, and they are walking through a muddy battlefield. It is all got artillery shells around it, there are trenches around it, barbed wire है. It is a scene out of World War I. Only difference is उनके ऊपर there are around 20 drones which are hovering overhead. This shows one thing very nicely that image brought out is that the nature of conventional warfare is more or less the same. Maybe it has gone back to an earlier era, with the difference that there are a lot of infusion of new technology, basic technology in the form of drones, mobile telephones, internet connectivity, and things like this. And one more thing comes about, sir, so strongly in this war, जो आपके the nature of war में था. When the Russians attacked, we must go right to how it began. Their offensive moved very slowly. As a tank man, I was watching the maneuvers when YouTube पर देख रहा था what they were, how their tanks were moving and all that. First thing that struck me was जो basic battle drills थे were not being adhered. They were not following it. Tanks were bunched close to other. Air support नहीं आ रहा था. Tanks, infantry were not going together. Artillery fire और movement का coordination नहीं था. The Russians learned this lesson. In the next year, the casualties dropped to 10%. Maybe because they were on the defensive and not on the offensive, but because they were following better tactics. So it brings out, no matter how the nature of war has changed, but the basic troop tactics, minor tactics जो हम कहते हैं इस फौज में, it has to be followed at every level. Basic
Yeah,
conventional fighting techniques have to be adhered to, and new technology like drones, communication, network battlefield will only add on to these aspects.
right. So, आपने, you brought out a lot of things. Let me recap and give you another perspective. Uh, what you rightly said, that the whole story was that wars will be short and sweet. And the wars will be dominated by cyber attacks and, things like that. And they'll no more be kinetic. One thing which this Russia-Ukraine war has shown is that wars will be kinetic, wars will be violent, and wars can be long.
Yes,
So
and deep.
countries have to prepare for the long war. Gone are the days when you can lull yourself into a thing that no, लड़ाई सिर्फ 15 दिन एक महीने में नतीजा निकलेगा ये वगैरह 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 वगैरह. So to that extent, the violent nature of war has come back, like you said, mercilessly. Okay. And then the second thing is the technological outcomes. Once upon a time, there was very little you knew about what's happening about the enemy. In this war,
Everything
both
transparent.
knew everything, the complete transparency, right? Through a set of sensors, ground-based sensors, human intelligence, uh, satellites, as also drones and things like that, aircraft, everything. So there was nothing where you could hide. जहाँ भी जाओ तो you have to be open,
Yes,
and your intent was very clearly available, and that is one of the reason why you see that people reacting, because a chap who wants to attack, right? Uh, his move is known. The
known to
defender
everybody.
is ready to receive him. Okay. And that's been the case almost throughout this whole story, except, in the initial phases, the Ukrainians were a little taken aback by the speed of the Russian
Course.
offensive, but then they stabilized it. And if you remember, a northern
Yes,
thrust
sir.
towards Kiev was rolled back. And
Yes,
then the Russians started from other side. So the Ukrainians could undertake good defense because of enhanced battlefield transparency, which has
yes,
actually changed the way wars are fought. Then again, the
yes,
Ukrainians went on that Kharkiv offensive. They got something, they got a certain amount of surprise, but then again, the Russians could stabilize the situation.
yes.
Because of this enhanced
Transparency.
transparency, the Ukraine counteroffensive was discerned and stymied. Now we are talking of the Russian counteroffensive, which is going again. Everyone knows it's going to come,
Knows it.
right? And the Ukrainians, whether they have 45 days fighting or not, they're going to defend, and they're going to defend smartly. Because one thing we have known that in minor tactics, the way people fight, everything, the Ukrainian army has come out much better because they've been able to handle things, their resources, disparate resources, everything much better, right? So they're going to fight. That leads us to the nature, the way wars are fought has changed completely. And
Yes.
we also have to understand that this is one of the first conventional wars of this nature after a long time. Before this, if you see, whether the Iraq war or the Afghanistan war was all asymmetric wars.
Absolutely,
It
sir.
was between
Absolutely.
a conventional force and a non-conventional force. Okay,
Yes.
now of course you're right. So that way, the nature of war has actually not changed. It has gone back to earlier
Earlier.
times, like you rightly said. Okay.
Sir, if you
Then, of
permit,
course,
may I add
yeah, yeah.
something to what you just said, sir? Like you talk about transparency. Very, very true. You know, like they said, जब वो Russians they when they concentrated, they did the same thing जो हम करते थे World War II में, and I think many of
World
us
War
had
Two,
learned.
man.
या अपना formation को यहाँ से right से left हटा दिया, पीछे लगा दिया to fool the enemy into thinking कि they have, the level of forces are different. Each tank, BA number wise, was identified.
Oh, yeah,
And they were identified with what, sir? With this, not the high-tech telephones, not the high-tech satellites. This mobile telephone.
no mobile
जो नीचे
telephone.
they used to take the photograph, send it.
Yeah,
They do everything. But sir,
yeah,
when the Ukrainians launched, there's one thing which is a big lesson for many military observers. When the Ukrainians launched their counter-offensive in October 2022, they actually fooled the Russians by using a very small force. They only used two brigades, two mechanized brigades, and they could have two other infantry follow-up brigades. उन्होंने बहुत deception कर लिया. They had on social media announced we are going to the south in Kherson, and they built up a deception media plan on social media. The southern command of the Ukraine forces, they actually put up on their website that we are launching an offensive to liberate Kherson. And that fooled the Russians into sending troops from the northeastern sector to the south. And then they launched the offensive with two brigades. So
yeah,
maybe this deception might have be easier to attain than surprise. Our military
yeah,
thinkers may like to think
yeah,
of
yeah. I
this way.
agree with you completely. I agree
Sir,
with you. Not only deception, information warfare, narrative
correct.
building has been a
Absolutely.
major feature of this war, which is completely different from what used to happen earlier, right?
Absolutely.
So the link between space, the way space has behaved in this, or the way space has been leveraged, especially by Ukrainians with the Starlinks of,
Elon Musk. Elon
Elon
Musk.
Musk, and the way the civil military fusion has taken place in battle, during battle, is something new, which
Yes.
is absolutely out of character with all the earlier battles which you have done. Information, for example, before last year, I remember in the third week of February, it was all over all news that the CIA and the American intelligence agencies, all of them, all their right technical, they had predicted that Russia is going to come in. It
Come in.
was
Yes.
absolutely very clear, and they had built their narratives: who's wrong, who's right, yeah, wo jo bhi hai. And if you remember, in the initial stages, the Russians were losing their narrative war. The narrative war
Oh,
was
yes.
completely with, yeah,
Dominated by the West.
it was
They blocked them.
dominant by itself. So the importance of narratives in a war has changed the way war has been fought
Absolutely,
also.
sir. Absolutely, sir.
Okay. So this is what the whole story is about: nature of war, technological impact, X, Y, Z. The war, violent war, fought with new conditions of life is something. And then for the first time, you also saw some kind of an economic war happening and Russia getting out of it.
Sanctions.
Sanctions
Yes.
on Russia. and the way Russia prepared for these sanctions. Russia knew that this will come, well prepared. They sidestepped the sanctions and got out of it. And today, after 2 years, Russian economy is pretty stable. So that's a major
It's,
issue.
it's growing at 4.3%,
Yeah.
fastest
So
growing economy in
and
Europe.
okay. So with this, what are the outcomes? Let's say for both the warring parties, what are the outcomes for Russia and what are the outcomes for Ukraine as you see in this war?
So
You
in
said
the in
you made the point that look, a lot of territory of Ukraine has been lost to Russia. There's no doubt about it. But beyond that, what are the outcomes which they have gained or not been able to gain?
Okay. So you are referring to the economic and the information domain or all
Anything,
domain?
anything,
All.
anything, anything. Look, we are talking
The,
about the global outcomes of the
yes.
war of both the
Okay,
nations.
but the two things which you call for interesting, these are the information campaign and the socio-economic campaign. You brought out Russia had lost the information war, the war of perception. But today, it is Ukraine who lost it. Because one of the first rules in the war of perception is it has to be grounded on the truth. And the truth is that the sizable losses which the Ukrainians have taken cannot be concealed to the world any longer. There's fast understanding that perhaps they may be supporting a losing cause. Even the US are saying that. So the info and Russia's information campaign are building up. They are having their
Yeah,
own narrative coming out in different. The television has got their more interviews. They were very, very crude about it earlier. Now there's a lot of finesse with which they are doing it, sir.
yeah, I agree with you. On
You
that, there's
know,
no doubt.
yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
economics,
So,
yes, and sanctions wise, sir, the sanctions were imposed by the USA. Honestly, the USA is nobody to impose global sanctions. Rightly, India, China, and a lot of independent minded nations told the US, go take a walk. We will do what is good for our country. We will buy oil at prices that suit us. We will buy gas at the price that suit us because Europe was doing the same. Even today, sir, the oil is flowing from Russia into Europe through
yeah, we
Ukraine.
know that.
So
Yeah,
it's a
not only through
hypothetical
Ukraine, it's
sanction.
coming. It's not
Yes.
oil. The refined products are going from India to Europe,
The
Russia to
largest
India to
producer.
Europe. Okay, so that there's not on that. I have no doubt. I'm
Yes,
not talking
yes.
of that. I'm not talking of those outcomes. I'm talking of the outcomes for Russia. What has Russia gained in this war? What has Ukraine gained or lost in this
Okay.
war?
Okay, Alloy.
Let's
Now,
look
sir,
at it. After 2 years, what does Russia have to show
chill,
for itself, and
chill,
what does
chill.
Ukraine have to show for itself? And look
And
for
listen,
everything, right? There could be a flip also. Okay.
absolutely. Russia, sir, now in when 2014, when they took over Crimea and they presented the world the fait accompli, they had taken over Crimea and left it. It stopped out there. Today, they have taken over the two southern provinces, Kherson, Zaporizhia, the two eastern provinces, Luhansk, Donetsk. Referendum kar diya, it is theirs. In a fait accompli, sir, these provinces are now Russian. I don't think Ukraine or any other power has got
No,
the
yeah.
capability to take it back. It is
Okay,
theirs.
I agree with you.
Now, by attaining this, they have created a line of control. They have taken the richest provinces, and more than that, by the southern provinces, they have got complete control over the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, which is what
Yeah,
they wanted all throughout. More than the
yeah,
land, so this was the aim. Ukraine is now a landlocked country with three ports, Odessa and two very minor ports. They can transport their goods, their exports, literally at the whim of Russia.
yeah. Yeah, I think you lost him.
So,
Yeah.
in that, they have attained their aim in
Okay.
making the Ukraine totally dependent on them. Now, whether they decide to prosecute the gains
No, they're
and
not
gain
dependent.
even
I mean, that's that. Look. Ajay. Don't go on a. Ukraine
okay,
is not
okay,
dependent on Russia still. Okay,
for its
let's not
exports,
get to that.
for its
Huh?
exports, for its exports, I say.
Look, there is on that. I think the question is still out whether
Uh,
it can be done or not. Yeah,
uh,
I agree with you. Russia has got a lot of territory. Okay, but the outcome is the territory and the control over the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. It has got its interest in the Crimea thing. Okay. And Ukraine has lost all this territory. It will never get back. That I've been telling right from beginning. Okay. But there are other issues which are bigger than this, which I wanted to flag, and let me flag it through what I read. And this is
Okay.
something which is very interesting. Okay. Uh, what he says, Russia might have created its own Pakistan. And when you read this, you realize a very important thing. So let me read through this. With Ukraine running low on weaponry and ammunition, American military assistance is in doubt, and Russia determined to fight on. Exactly what you're saying. Ukraine victory now seems out of reach. In fact,
So
they
it
might lose the
seems,
whole
yes.
story. Yeah, but this is where the catch is. If the fundamental purpose of Putin's war was to keep Ukraine within Russia's orbit, politically, culturally, and economically, it has had the opposite effect. And this is going
Right.
to be permanent.
Right.
Ukraine's leaders and citizens, particularly from those younger generations, have decided that their future lies with the West, not Russia. And this also, again, you cannot debate on this also.
Yes.
Russia's assault on Ukraine impelled two more countries, Finland and Sweden, to seek NATO membership. Okay. Neither had shown the slightest inclination to sign up before the invasion, and both have first rate armies. With their addition, Russia will be even more hemmed in, not least in the Baltic and by a 830-mile land border it shares with Finland. Actually, Russia, if you look at it, has got a hostile Ukraine and now Finland and Sweden who are also against it. The last point is very interesting. Even a truncated Ukraine would be amongst Europe's biggest countries. Its heft added to by a battle-tested army of 500,000. After all, the army might get defeated or it might not be able to stop. But the army, if it has remained intact, it will start an insurgency against Russia.
Formidable
A-
force.
Right?
Yes.
And that is already far larger than that of any European NATO country. And that will become only stronger and more modern. Okay. Now, if you look at this and look at the original political aim, because war, right, has to end in politics. After all, Clausewitzian thing is that war is politics by other means.
Extension of yes.
Right? So the political aim of Russia is not territory alone. It was to keep NATO away, but now NATO has come closer. It was to make Ukraine, back into a
Backyard.
Russosphere, if I may say. Okay, that has not happened. Okay, militarily, you might say 2 years they have added this, but there's also a thing that they had to withdraw from Kiev. Okay, and they went in and withdrew completely from Kiev, right? And whether we like it or not, at this point of time, the Russian economy is okay, but it has opened itself. After all, at some point of time, anyone and everyone will become, will get fed up of this war, and this will become a huge sore at the belly of Russia. That you cannot, right? And you
No, I
cannot
agree.
go
I
and,
agree on that. Yes, yes. I agree on that, sir.
right? Militarily, see, there's a classic case. Militarily, Russia might win.
Uh-huh.
Politically, it might lose.
Uh-huh.
And it's not as if Ukraine also will win. Ukraine is going to lose it either way. They are
Worse,
going to lose
unfortunately.
politically and militarily. I had no doubts from the beginning. They will, but to think that Ukraine has packed up is difficult to think. Even today, there was a news that they have downed one of Russia's AVACs. So,
Right.
and they've been downing,
Ships,
ships
yes,
and
yes.
all
They
that.
have been called attrition.
Yeah. So, the problem for Russia, I'll say the problem for Russia today and tomorrow and beyond, when you look at this story beyond, is that the question will always come up: has Russia met its political goals, achieved its political goals? If you remember, Putin spoke of denazification.
Correct.
He spoke of complete disarming Ukraine,
Correct.
everything. Have all those objectives been met? And you will find, yes, militarily they have gained quite a bit territory. They subdued the Ukraine army, but on most other things, the jury is still out. Yeah,
Yes,
your
I
views on
agree.
this?
I totally agree with your perspective, sir. But now the story like this, कहानी अब तक बाकी है. And
नहीं,
on
बाकी
the
है, but
sir, on the political perspective or the political view, we have got three very important elections coming up this year, sir. One is in March, in which Putin, I think, has already been declared the victor.
no, what the Putin that's no election. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Look, that's not an important election.
No, it is, sir.
That's
In
just a story.
July,
Yeah,
sir, in July is the Ukrainian elections, in
yeah.
which if they have somebody who is come in who is in favor of a land for peace compromise, and they agree to
Let's
the
see.
status. No, no, and it's a scenario, sir. And they agree to the status quo, like they agree to the status quo of Crimea being part of Russia in 14. Then the situation will be different. And in
Yeah.
November, at the US presidential elections, in which perhaps the new incumbent may not be so favorable to the NATO cause, forget everybody else, to NATO. I mean,
No,
then,
Ajay, what I'm saying is, whatever you're saying is right.
uh,
Whatever you're saying is right. Even after all that, I don't see a case where Ukraine will join Russia back.
no, no, never, 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 sir.
Uh, If Ukraine doesn't join Russia back,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Huh.
it's an open sore for Russia. There's no
Yes.
peace. And
Yes. It's an
then,
LC.
yeah, and then those two countries at the top, Sweden and Finland, which have come
Finland.
now have borders, NATO has come on its borders. I think you'll have to look at it from that perspective.
I
You'll
agree on
see
that. No, I
that
totally agree.
Russia, Putin has his initial, because these are the conditions: denazification, Onera,
Huh.
complete disarming of Ukraine. वो होगा ही नहीं
Yeah,
अभी.
they weaken the army, but
Okay,
they're going to finish it. Yes.
yeah. And if Russia goes far beyond this line, they might go 100, 200 kilometers. If they go far beyond, they'll get overstretched and they'll also come into a problem, right?
Right.
So we're going to see a festering problem here going on. After
Right.
all, we have to remember, like you said, from 2014 onwards, this war is going on. It's
Right.
going to go on, and this only thing is at that time, it was a little subdued. It was, Russia was supporting those rebels in
The rebels in
Donetsk and
Luhansk.
Luhansk.
Yes.
But now it is going to be the Russian army which is going to be committed along this front and continue.
Right.
So, to that extent, like I said, we'll have to see how things pan out.
Sir,
Okay.
I agree with you, sir. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And
So,
perhaps that is one of the reasons why Putin is talking so much now of negotiations.
yeah, he is
Maybe
wanting to
both,
negotiate.
maybe both sides want to negotiate peace. The only thing is there's no common ground. Like the Ukraine
Yeah, there's no
start,
common ground.
the Russian start point is the area is ours. The Ukraine start point is you first
Yeah.
vacate and we start discussing.
Okay. So, let us see how things go. So,
Sir,
right, what I see generally is both have lost. The guys who actually won are the UK or USA. Okay.
yes.
USA has laughed its way to the bank. It's got a booming
Of course,
economy. It has not committed one. It has not committed one person on ground, and it is happy.
yes.
Right. So that's where the whole story stands. Okay. Now let's see what has been the impact on China. Let's look at that. That's an interesting thing.
That's
If you
very
can
interesting.
handle it, otherwise I'll handle it.
No, no, no. So that China is another person which has impact, which has benefited tremendously from this war.
Okay. How has
Firstly,
it benefited?
I'll tell you why, sir. Firstly, it sidetracked world attention. The whole world was moving towards the Indo-China Sea. China is the greatest threat to the world. The US order was coming. Everyone, the Europe, NATO was moving towards the Indo-Pacific. Suddenly, attention has been deflected from the Indo-Pacific and China towards Russia. Russia has now become public
Okay.
enemy number one. They are very happy with that situation. The other thing is Russia has now moved squarely into the Chinese embrace.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk earlier that we should wean over by Europe, by the European Union. We should wean over Russia to our side so that they are part of our axis against the major threat facing the world, which is China. That's what happened. They're actually forming an axis. It's an informal one, but yes, it's coming close to each other. The
Okay.
third thing,
Fine.
sir, they
Mm.
have benefited economically too. They have got now gas flowing into China through the power of Siberia gas line. They are, like us, they have bought oil at very good rates. It is helping them tremendously. And in one other way, if you look at it, sir, Putin's sizable territorial gains and the fact that the Europe is war weary, USA is distracted by a war in both Europe and the Middle East. Will it open a window of opportunity for China to perhaps
Mm.
try a hand in Taiwan?
Okay.
That is a
Good.
possibility
Now
which
that
you
you
can.
that you mentioned all that, now that you mentioned all that, I'll give you a different perspective altogether.
Terrific, sir.
Okay. It's a completely different perspective altogether, and it's happening on ground. First and foremost, I agree with you. Initially, naturally, when this war started, for the first 6 7 months, China was very happy that there was distraction, and USA is now gone that side. But look at it today. Today, USA has deployed 5 carriers there, and they're very clear that we'll handle you. Despite the fact of their commitment in Gaza, it's not only Ukraine; it's also in Gaza. Okay, and they are very clear as to how they're going to handle Putin and everything. And I don't think they've lost their focus on China ever. And the
Right,
fact that the way and the fact and also the way they handle the Taiwanese elections. Okay,
right.
if you look at the Taiwanese elections, who won in Taiwan?
The
William
Taiwanese
Lang.
Democratic Progressive Party.
Let me speak. It is William Lang, right? Uh, okay, who lost the Taiwanese elections? China. It was China who lost it because they supported the Kuomintang completely,
PMT. Yes.
and they lost. Okay, so they lost. You have a completely opposite guy coming in who's a splittist, who's a pro-separatist. He's been said as pro-separatist. He's now in chair. And 2 years back, when the speaker of Russia, I mean USA, went to Taiwan, there was a lot of holla. Today,
Yes.
there's a Senate committee which has gone and sitting in Taiwan, and they're talking. So China has not been able to do anything about it, and China knows that US, right? So that problem is there, and they are no closer to taking Taiwan than before. So they have not
Right.
moved anywhere towards Taiwan. Okay. Now the critical part, which many don't understand, is this: Ukraine was part of China's breadbasket. It has lost
Right.
completely. So as a result, China has had for the past 2 years to struggle for its food security. It has
Right.
struggled to such an extent that every 2 to 3 months, Xi Jinping goes about and says, "Look, we should have our iron bowl in our hands, and we should cater for our food security." And he's feeling this food insecurity, right? And
Right.
this is not my saying. This is what the Chinese media talks. Okay, so we think that, right? Then Ukraine, interestingly, was the provider of certain critical technology for China, like ship engines, aircraft engines, everything. You have to understand the symbiotic relationship between Russia and Ukraine. When they were together as
Power
part of USSR, a lot of design used to happen in Russia, to present day Russia, and a lot of the manufacturing used to
manufacturing.
happen in Ukraine. Okay, that relationship continued despite the fact that they were separate countries. Okay, but now after this, that relationship has broken, and Russia might have a lot of technological know-how,
Manufacturing.
but they
Mhm.
don't have the manufacturing capability of certain critical technologies. Which Ukraine, my guess is that technology might not might have been lost in this war, which means China doesn't get that critical technology. So China, if you think has gained, you have to rethink very hard. Then, third point, the Belt and Road was going squarely through Ukraine. The link to the
Yeah.
Belt and Road is cut. The Eurasian link to the Belt and Road is cut. It's only the Russian link which is there. So the Belt and Road has got a big hit. Okay. The next point, which is probably very important, yeah, they're getting oil and gas. There's no problem from Russia. They're happy. Like India, we benefited from that. The Chinese also would be benefiting. They're very happy. But and they, of course, the point you said, Russia and China are now together. They form a bloc. They're good friends, and all that is also fine. What is coming out is that a large part of the Chinese economic decline is attributable to the lack of exports. The
Right.
exports to the European countries and to USA has got hit badly. And that is one of the reasons why China is suffering. Its economy has slid.
Slump.
And yeah, following COVID was one. Immediately there's war. Europe is no more in good terms with China. Even 3 days back, 4 days back, European tariffs on Chinese goods have gone up, especially EVs. As a result, there's a glut in China today,
Please.
okay, of their EVs. They're not able to sell their EVs. Everyone thought their EVs will save Chinese economy. It's not saving. So the exports to Europe, which have money, whether you like it or not, they are the ones who have money, right? And USA is the one which has money to buy European Chinese exports. They have not done it. The reverse of this whole story is manufacturing has broken in China. Jobs have
Right.
gone down. As a result, the property, of course, China has contributed to its own problems and all that. So today, China's recovery to a large extent hinged on consumption in Europe and
Correct.
USA, and that is not happening. As a result, the Chinese downturn is going to be a long-term downturn. Okay, so this is something which I've always believed that China, everyone, contrary, I'm a contrarian thinker.
Uh,
Contrary to what people think, China's demise or the decline of China started coterminously with the Ukraine war. The choices which China has made, and they've now started, blacklisting firms which are dealing with Russia, both Europe and USA. USA did it long back. For the first time, last week,
Europe.
Europe has started it. So I don't think China has, benefited by this war at all. In fact, it has lost. The focus is back in Pacific. That's what the US people speak, and their economy has not gone up. And if you see overall, no one has bothered. Diplomatically, what has China gained? China has been shown to be diplomatically weak in the world affairs because it tried its best to stop the Ukraine and Russia war. Their foreign envoy, a special envoy, went to Ukraine. He spoke. He went and spoke to Putin. Both said,
Nothing
"Okay, thank
happened.
you. We've listened to you, and you carry on." Same thing has happened in Gaza and with Israel. Again, there they have failed. So I think China has lost quite a bit. And if you noticed, these days you don't see many big talk coming out of China that we're going to take Taiwan militarily. That has also
Yes.
stopped for the past 3 months. There's a reason for this, and the reason stems from here. Okay, and what's more, because of all this and the aggressiveness which China has shown, NATO has said we'll come to South China Sea and Western Pacific. Now, NATO coming to Western Pacific is bad news for China. So you have to
Absolutely.
look. If you look at these perspective, you find that there are issues. So I just thought I'll put all these
No, you're
Up
absolutely
to
right. So
you.
it is a very nice perspective you've given of the view on the other side. Yes, I agree with
Uh-huh.
you.
Okay, and the fact is that China's economy is declining. It's hemorrhaging. Okay, that's irrefutable. That's
Of
something, whether
course,
oil, soil, that is irrefutable. जा रहा है, उसका market down है, कोई खरीद नहीं रहा उसका सामान, वो तो fact है. Okay. Now what I'll do is I compiled a few points. We'll go over these points, see if we have missed the points or anything. We can have a talk, and then we'll go for questions. Yeah, we've spoken of character of war is changing. No more short, sweet war. The Ukraine conflict has challenged core assumptions. Okay, like you rightly said, the war has become an attritional slugfest, with each side attempting to wear down the other. And this model was supposed to be anachronistic and gone. Okay. The third point also we have spoken, ground maneuver has been minimal. The concept of air power has changed. This is important. If you see, for a 2 year war, the amount of air power which has been used has changed.
correct.
Fighters, shiters, helicopters, and all have not been used. More drones, missiles. That's the kind of air which has come in. Information warfare has dominated. Next point, logistics. Sustaining and growing forces is more important, and long range fire capability is dominant. Okay, this is what has come out. You see, even Russia, with its great manufacturing capability, has had to go to North Korea to get shells. And actually, that one action has put China off completely. Because what has happened? North Korea is no more fully dependent economically on China like it was. It's getting direct exports to Russia. Okay, and China is not happy about it. And if there is a split, I won't say split, if there's a problem tomorrow which will come up between China and Russia, it will be on North Korea.
It will.
This is the beyond North Korea.
As an
Okay,
angle one think of, sir, right?
yeah, North Korea. Okay, North Korea is the one. And North Korea is the common thing with South Korea, Japan, USA. So there's a problem in this new alliance, newfound alliance which is coming up. Notwithstanding the fact that Russia and China have had a lot of exercises. Russia, China, Iran are also cooperating, all that. But there's a core problem with North Korea which is coming up. Then, of course, precision weapons, fleets of drones, digital surveillance can reach far beyond front lines. And they pose a risk everywhere, which Russia has demonstrated absolutely in this war. That you can hit the other end of Ukraine, which you rightly said. Then, of course, the long held belief that expensive precision weapons are central to winning conflicts is broken. Russia has used so many precision weapons, okay, all across Ukraine. But has it
Mm.
won the war so far after 2 years? Not as it. So, our held, like I said, it's part of character of war. The thought that precision weapons will kill the other enemy and make him devoid of fighting is gone. Then GPS guided munitions are vulnerable to electronic jamming, which
Of
means
course, sir.
electronic warfare has played a big play in this. There are an interesting thing. Uh, Pairing older unguided artillery with sensors and
Of
drones is
course,
critical to success.
of
Okay,
course.
artillery has got a reinvention in a big manner, right? And that is a big lesson for us also. And artillery has rendered maneuver difficult and command posts unsurvivable. This is a Russian view. Okay. So this is both sides. Okay. And of course, addictions to cell phones is threatening. The digital trail is still a vulnerability. Electronic warfare is capable of detecting Wi Fi signals and Bluetooth enabled devices. This is the new cigarette in the foxhole. Let me
I
explain
like
this
this.
cigarette in the foxhole. What is a cigarette in the foxhole? In the First World War and the Second World War, people who used to smoke a cigarette in trenches, they used to be spotted at night by enemy snipers, and enemy snipers used to aim for that cigarette. Okay, so today people don't smoke cigarettes, and trench warfare is back. But the cell phone, because it is detectable, has become the cigarette in the foxhole. And
Nicely, sir.
okay, and of course, aerial reconnaissance has fundamentally changed. Earlier, aerial reconnaissance was by many other things. Today, it is dominated by satellites and drones. There's something
Drones.
which all modern armies have to think. Technologically, we have to change everything. So I thought I'll put all these points across. I just got them from various sources and just listed them out. Um, so if you have anything to add, we'll add. Otherwise, we'll take a few questions. We have about 10 minutes more
No,
to go.
it is like you brought so, but the two most important things that have come about now is the use of mobiles and drones
Ah,
in the war.
yeah,
And
yeah,
one thing, like you said, like the innovative manner in which drones have been used, I thought I'll share with the audience. They're used for different. It's not just sensor shooter, nothing. They've used it to
yeah,
detect minefields by
yeah,
actually having a drone flying over a suspected area with thermal images on top of it at
yeah.
4 in the morning, so that the ground is hard, it's cold, but the plastic mines inside have got a different
Is
signature.
what?
They can detect it. Our soldiers can, we can think of that
Yeah.
in this
So a lot of
mobile.
things, lot of things.
Yeah, now in the mobile artillery, which was called so correctly, this the Ukrainians developed an app. They call it Kropia. It is, they call it, the soldiers call it the Uber for artillery. In a
Ah,
nutshell,
okay.
how it worked was a target was detected. The minute a target was detected, this app would search for the nearest RT or fire unit in the vicinity which could engage it. Immediately pass the message and the coordinates to them, and that should fire it. And they said engagement times
And
dropped by about 3 to 5 minutes because of that. Same
yeah,
principle Uber uses. So these kind of techniques are something which our own thinkers may perhaps actually incorporate. Small,
yeah,
cheap,
I
and
think so.
effective.
Small, cheap things, but they make a big difference. Okay, right. So first question, uh, sir, why no one is speaking about artillery playing an important role in war? We just spoke
We
that
just spoke.
artillery has been the,
Okay.
yeah, we just spoke, so they don't, right. Uh, has both Ukraine and Russia not entered into long period of demographic decline considering the loss of young life? What is the impact on male-female ratio? How will this impact their economic recovery once the war ends? Yeah, your take.
So okay, sir. Now the demographic thing, yes, it has. But if you take a look at it, it is something which both Russia and Ukraine have lived with since 1945. In the World War
Mhm.
II, they lost 26 million men, most of them young men, most of them of fighting age. It has been a problem with them for many, many decades thereafter. This will
Yeah,
also, there be tragedy on both sides, but they'll manage with it.
they'll
As far
manage.
as,
Okay.
as far as the economic recovery goes, one is more optimistic of a Russian economic recovery
Yeah,
than the
not the
Ukrainian.
Ukraine one.
Ukrainian poor people, they have lost already to the tune of $700 billion. Just to
And they'll lose
recover,
more.
they lose more. Their
Yeah,
exports are depleting, their infrastructure is damaged, and they got no way of making it up. So
yeah,
Russia
I
may
agree
will,
with you.
yes, sir.
Russia has already recovered. Actually, Russia has
Correct.
already recovered, and Russia
Yes.
has got a whole lot of other resources, uh, gas, coal, energy resources, and it's got technology. It will recover. What you said is right. Ukraine might not. Okay. Now, okay, we've heard of this. Yeah. Now, listening to the conversation thus far, it seems as if Ukraine is winning hands on. No way. Forget it.
It's the other way around.
It's the
Russia
other
will.
way we have spoken. Look, what I made a point. Let me make the point again. Militarily, Russia will win this war. It has already won the war. There's no way Russia is going to lose this war militarily. Geopolitically, will Russia win as per its
That's the thing.
original aims? That's it's not going to win because it's already lost something. Will Ukraine win anything geopolitically? It has lost completely. The state of Ukraine, which will emerge out of this war, it's not going to get this area which is lost. Never, right? It's going to be a broken up state where its main thing is agriculture, whether the agriculture will revive because people are not there, whether its machinery and productivity will recover, which will not there, all that I spoke. So you have to understand this in the larger thing. We painted two, parallel pictures. But in the end, you have to take a holistic view of the whole story. Okay. Yeah, he says your view on Pitten's interview with Tucker Carlson. Look, that's just his way of putting things across. It's his narrative. That's part of the narrative. He's selling a narrative. इसमें सब बेच रहे हैं. Narrative बेच रहे हैं. Yeah. Anything else you want to say, Ajay?
And it is a sign that Russia is now engaging in winning the war of perception
What?
in a big way.
Yeah.
They get the Western media
Yeah.
to sell, to buy their line.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Why adequate air power cover and support was not given to Russian army during the initial few months of invasion? Was it political or military level decision as per your analysis of war? Ajay, yes.
You know something? This is a wonderful question. And actually, the jury is still out as to why did the Russians not use the air power. By air power, I don't mean drones. I mean their attack aircraft, their air superiority aircraft, and even attack helicopters. They have used only 75 Su-25 ground attack bombers in this invasion. The bulk of the air force has not been utilized. Even when they used attack helicopters in support of ground forces, it was done very patchily. The attack helicopters could not be so effective because of effective Ukrainian aid given by the US in the initial days. But honestly, why had the Russians? I mean, most people thought it'll begin with the Russians dominating the skies in the first 14 days as normally done, and then the ground forces would take over. Why did the Russians not use adequate air power? There'll be no clear answer. Putin has said that he has deliberately not used air power to prevent damage to the Ukrainian people, which he did not want. I don't buy that line, but yes. Why they have not used it the way they did? Maybe they were preserving the air resources for a larger confrontation. This will emerge only later after the war is over.
Later on, it will not come out now. But my fundamental reason is he was not willing to use it because he knew at that point of time Ukraine had pretty good air defenses,
Eddie.
and he could not. If he had lost his air, Russia would have been left with bigger holes in its larger game plan. Okay, okay. Uh, what is Russia's dragon's teeth anti-tank fortifications? Can we do something similar to avoid the possibility of the infamous salami slicing of the PLA on our borders? Yeah,
Now, see, Dragon Teeth is a good name. What are the Dragon Teeth? It is a line of 7 blocks, something like this. Okay. It is an anti-tank obstacle which is used in
bus.
planes to stop the tanks, and fortified with lines of mines. Dragon Teeth is nothing new. It's been used since World War One.
It's
More in World War Two,
long
it was
back.
an anti-tank device, right? Prohibitive. You can't use it everywhere. There are better ways to stop armor. I think mobile minefields are a better way of doing it. Covering gaps, I think a better way of doing it. This is for the dragon teeth which they have made, is again in the area they have captured and they intend to keep theirs. So they're willing to invest in very expensive and extensive fortification to preserve it. It is not cost
Yeah,
effective for us.
yeah, it's not cost effective. Let me also tell you, this has nothing to do with salami slicing. Right? Okay, salami slicing is the whole story is completely different.
Yes.
Salami slicing is not physical war. Salami slicing is incremental takeover. What happens in salami slicing? The actual thing is there's a legal status. First, you question that legal status. Then you change that legal status, and then you defend that legal status in your favor. That is salami slicing. It happens in 3 stages always. If you read the way China this thing, okay, mm, okay, okay. This is something interesting. Yeah. Any idea about how many senior officers, colonels, lieutenant colonels, etc., and how many juniors have been killed on both sides? For we lose many officers in war, so I wanted to know if these countries too. I think they've lost quite a bit, right? You have any figures on this, Ajay?
No, we know that the casualty figures on both sides, I think it's about 1,20,000 approximately, which is, I mean, debatable, and
Yeah.
around 1,80,000 the Ukrainian side. They've had more casualties, right? There have been a lot of officers, but it. But I'm afraid I don't have the exact figures, so I'm not able to give a comment on this. But yes, casualties have been heavy.
Okay. Then JBJP. General sir, you have worked successfully with the political leader Raksha Mantri Manohar Parrikar ji on our artillery program. Yes, your wartime advice to Putin, a political leader, what would be your advice? My advice is, at this point of time, seek peace and get out of it. Okay. And
Solid
Russia is a very great country. Okay. At this is the point of time where probably this year, maybe, if say a guy like Trump comes back and like what Colonel Ajay Singh was saying, there could be some negotiation and get out of that place. You might like to retain those areas. That's a different thing. If you see if you can negotiate, because it's time to now start negotiating.
Yes.
Otherwise, Russia will get entangled with China inextricably, which Russia doesn't want to do so. What has happened? You see, a very subtle change has happened in global geopolitics. And this is something which General Raj Shukla mentioned in his last episode with us on India's changing security outlook. I'm getting it back from there. Till, say, 3, 4 years back, economy was the biggest driver of geopolitics. That is changing. It is military might which is more important. Economy is taking a backseat. Russian economy is not great, but it is still a global power. That's what is emerged, right? Your ability, your economy is going up, and you have a strong military, so your power is going up. Same thing you see Europe. Europe has got no military worth its name. Its power is going down. Okay, you look at China. Everyone now today, after this Ukraine war and this Israel Hamas war, and these problems in West Asia, where they have not shown a military hand at all, everyone is suspecting Chinese military, and their economy is in problem. So their overall power is going down. It might be still big, that's okay. So Russia shouldn't lose its military power, and it is today if it continues with this, like I said, it will be open sore for Russia. It should see how to stop that. Otherwise, वो तो bleed करता रहेगा. Okay. And Russia doesn't have manpower. 2 साल हो गया, कितने साल सह लेगा ये सब कुछ? So there's a major issue. That's my advice I would like to give. Okay. This is very interesting, and I would like to thank. While I'm not Indian, I concur with the level of professionalism in the Indian Army. Ajay, thanks to you. Congratulations to you.
So
It's
I think
genuinely
thanks
world
to our
class.
officers and men, all of them.
Yeah. As evidenced by retired generals like yourself. Look, let me tell you, Ahmadi, I'm glad that you have come on the show and you have, recognized this. This is not just one of us. This is the characteristic of our Indian Army. Okay, we are prepared to talk. Look, if you notice, he is a colonel. I am a general. Okay, but professionally we are speaking. It is not my rank which is overriding him. I am trying to be logical. He's trying to be logical, and we are seeing each other's point of view.
And not
That is
necessarily agreeing.
professionalism, and not
Not
necessarily agree
necessarily.
also. Yeah, we're not going to agree. That's not the point. But when it comes to core issues, we are on one page. It's not like Pakistan one page. We are on one page really here. And that's the professionalism of the Indian Army. And I'm glad that we are part of this army. And
We must thank
I'd
him
like
for
to
this.
take this. Yeah, I thank you profusely. We also recognize that others are as professional. We like to examine, all countries, including Pakistan and China, professionally and honestly. Right? Only then we will have progress. And I'll take this opportunity. I'm very glad that on Ganesh shot, whoever is watching it, just think. I am glad on gunner shot there's someone who's not an Indian who says that he concurs with the professionalism in the Indian Army, as evidenced by retired journalists like yourself. And that is why I say I want more people to come on gunner shot and watch this, because we'll give you honest professional things which India wants. Don't you think so, Ajay? I want
Totally,
more
sir.
people,
Totally.
totally.
Yes,
You will
yes.
not
It
get a
is.
channel. And I'll ask Ajay this honest question. Do you find any other channel which has such open discussion and on professional issues?
So our debate has shown it. We have not agreed. We on
Mm,
not I've not agreed. We have had different perspectives, and we
yeah,
express them so openly. And
yeah.
like we put it last time, sir, it is a jugalbandi on this show.
Jugalbandi, yeah. We agree to disagree and we disagree to agree. That's the way we go about it. Okay. Namaskar, sir. What is the total military and civil death count on both sides? I think Col Ajay just mentioned it out. Okay. Uh, okay. Akash says questions that came to mind were duly answered during the progress of the webinar. Look forward to more. Yeah, sure. Akash, that's our aim. Okay. Uh, he says opinion on the end game, sir. We've told you, we've highlighted it. Yeah, we've given you a very clear thing that Russia will have to live with a hostile Ukraine, Finland, and Sweden on its borders. NATO is not going to run away from Russia. Okay, and Russia will hold on to the complete Luhansk and Donetsk areas and Crimea, and it will continue like this unless they come to some viable media. There might be a change of government in Ukraine, right? Putin will get re-elected. That there's no doubt. So that's how it is. Okay. Uh, yeah. So Ajay, the Uber for artillery you mentioned, we might need Uber for sticks and batons. So to deal with salami slicing efforts of China going forward. No, no, don't worry, we'll handle it. We know how to handle it well. But what Uber has said has caught everyone's mind. Yeah, that's great. Um, okay, dear sir, are you aware? 95% of Israel launch vehicle visible parts are. Yeah, yeah, we know that. Don't worry. Okay,
Nice.
then yeah, okay. Your opinion on two viewpoints. Russia is weakened and have lost 350k soldiers. Russia preserved own forces and primarily used Wagner, which was an irregular formation. Your views?
See, it's not 3,50,000. A figure which is more commonly accepted is 1,20,000. Yeah, which includes dead and severely injured who cannot come back out here. And
Yeah,
it would be around that range most probably. Now, if you take a look at when they say they preserve their own force and use Wagner, yes, they used Wagner in Bakhmut. They have also used the Donetsk and the Luhansk militia in the Donetsk, and their own formations were aided by that. Now, a lot of people have said that if these irregular militia can do the job of soldiers, why don't we use them more often? And one thing I always want to bring out to the audience like ours is, though the Wagner group did a good job in securing Bakhmut, in capturing it at tremendous casualties, we must remember that it ended with that disastrous march to Moscow and that death of Wagner later
yeah.
on. Only goes to prove that no matter what are the irregular forces you use, there is nothing you need better than conventional, strong, disciplined military under strong government and political control.
Yeah. Okay. Are Ukrainian following NATO war strategy or Soviet time battle strategy with Western training? It's a mix of all. They have actually, I admire the Ukrainian way of fighting because they've been quite innovative. With what little they have, they've done quite a bit. It's a different thing. They're
Yes,
going to lose the war militarily. Okay. Innovation. I have learned quite a lot from the Ukrainians. Yeah, your take, Ajay.
totally, sir, totally. What they like innovation, like when in the initial days of the wars when they didn't have drones, innovation like they used drones by using the pizza delivery drones. They were
Yeah.
the ones that to climb up with a small mobile fitted beneath it to act as a camera, and the drone delivery boys who became drone operators. They
Yeah.
were very innovative, like the Uber part. So when the manner used anti-tank resources was so good, the manner it is the Russians who learned from them later on.
Yeah. I
But
agree with you.
again,
Then,
to bring out one thing is when the US they were following the Soviet doctrines because they were ingrained in that. They were part of it. They when they tried to have a mix of NATO war strategy with a mix of Soviet era equipment is when they one of the reasons why the offensive went totally awry.
or
Remember,
yeah.
a lot of advisors, the Western advisors, were pressurizing the Ukrainians to follow the campaign along their lines, which is one of the reasons for the
And
rift
that's,
between them.
yeah,
And
I
I
agree with
think
you.
the fact that they were caught between two boats is one of the reasons why the offensive did not attain as much as the earlier offensive did.
Yeah. Okay. The last thing, comment. It's a phenomenal channel. Thanks a lot, Harjeet. Thanks a lot for everything. I think with this, there's hardly any questions left. Adil says, hello, General. Hi, how are you? Why Putin is not using Russian Air Force? We've already answered this
Try to
question,
cover it,
right?
yes.
Okay. I think we've covered the whole lot. I think we've had a great time with you, Ajay. And
Thank you
thanks
so
for
much.
making time to come and speak about the Ukraine war. Uh, it was very nice. And to everyone, please give this to everyone and let everyone understand the larger issues of Ukrainian war and how we can learn from it, because there's a lot to learn from this war. Thank you. Good evening and Jai Hind to all of you. And
Thank sir.
Ajay, Jai Hind to you also.
Thank you, sir. Such an honor and a pleasure being on your show. I always enjoy the interaction that we have. Such a pleasure and a special
Thank you.
thank you to all the viewers.